And the next step is we're going to have to add a server project. So you want to right click your solution, click add, new project. And in the list here, you're going to want to look for ASP.NET Core Web API. This is the project type you're going to want to select. I'm using C# also, by the way, guys. If you in the languages here, you could pick the language you want. So this entire demo is going to be C# based. If you don't know C#, there's a lot of resources on the internet. We're going to create a project called Nuno Solutions Employees.Server. This is the server side project, and we're going to allow that. Just leave the defaults for now. Actually, I'm not going to use the minimalist, so I'm going to uncheck use minimal APIs. You can leave that on if you know what you're doing. So I'm going to uncheck that for now, and now you have a server-side project where you can, and what's interesting, it's still using minimalist APIs. That's okay. We can work with this. It's not a huge deal. It's just a different way to do it. This is like a new programming model for web APIs. We'll use it. It's not a huge deal. So, okay, so let's just build this project, and it's successful. Okay. The other thing we're going to do, we need one more project, because when we create the classes or models, right, that we're going to use that represent the employee records, we don't want to create those models or those classes in both projects. So what we can do is add a new project. That's basically a class library that can be shared between these projects. So you can just type in class library, and I would select the Blazor class library. That's the one you want to pick for this kind of project, because it lets you create components that you can then take this. If you take this class library and you add a reference to it from another Blazor project, you can actually use the components in this library. It's pretty cool. So we're going to call this Nuno Solutions Employees .shared, and just click create here. There we go. So we have, I really should have named this Nuno Solutions Employees.client, so we know it's the front end application, but for this, you'll know that if it doesn't say server or shared, you'll know that's the client front end application. So first things first, I mean, we have a component here you can see in the shared project already. I'm actually gonna delete this for now. We don't really need this. Same thing with this JS interrupt. We don't need that. Those are just like starter files. You don't need this either. I'm gonna delete that. Okay, so now we're ready to, let me just build it. Well, actually, first, let me build it. I want to make sure all the projects build successfully, and they did. Next step here, in this client application, we're going to right-click dependencies and add project reference. And we're going to want to add a project reference to Nuno Employees.shared, the shared project. And then in the server project, we're going to do the same exact thing. Right-click the dependencies and add project reference shared. All right, so now the client app and the server app both have a dependency on the shared project. So whatever we added to the shared project will be visible to the client and the server application. So if we want to share code between the two, we can. Just save this. All right, let's just do another build, make sure it actually runs. And before we do anything, we're going to add a component to the shared library. And we're going to create a folder first called components. And then into this folder, we're going to add a new Blazor component. And we're going to call this employees. This is going to be our employee list component. Okay. And for now, what we're going to do is just, right now we have an H3 tag in here. We're not going to add anything special to it. We're just going to make sure that we could actually use this component in our front end. So let's go back into the Nuno Solutions client application. And first thing we're going to do is expand pages and then expand shared. So in the nav menu, that's the menu. Let me just run the app. Actually, I want to show you couple things we're going to do here. We're just going to like get rid of some of this default code at the add, which we really don't need. It just makes it a little more complicated for you guys in this way. So we have a menu with a home, counter, and a fetch data. We're going to get rid of all that. We're just going to have a home page. So to do that, stop the project. We're going to delete the counter component, or page rather. We're going to delete the fetch, the fetch data component. We're going to leave the index razor component. That's our default home page. Now in the nav menu shared component, we're going to get rid of those extra menus. If you look here, you have the counter and the fetch data. These are those menus that were on the left. We're going to just get rid of those for now. And we could technically, if we wanted to, add a new component called employees. So that's actually what we're going to do. Let me just undo this. I'm going to delete one of these menus, keep the other one, and I'm going to rename the counter one to employee list. All right, and this href right here, it's pointing to a page called counter. We're going to change this to employees, like that. And just to keep it consistent, we'll call it employee list. Save it. And now in here, we're going to add a brand new razor page. If you use this one, it's actually going to create a CS HTML razor page. That's not what we want. We want a razor component. And I'll show you how to change that into a page. We're going to call this employee list. Just remember one thing. Whenever you add a razor component, you should always use a capital letter for the first letter in the name of the component. In fact, you should really use Pascal casing for this. And actually, I just have a capital there by mistake. And so let's click Add, and now we have an employee list component inside our client application, right? But we want this not to be a component. We really want this to be a page. To do that, the very top of the page, you're going to do add page, and then you're going to do double quote slash, and we're going to just type in employee list. So this right here is the page name, basically. So remember the navigation menu? You go into the nav menu razor component. This href is pointing to employee list. This employee list, points directly to this page now because they're using the same name. Okay, I just wanted to point that out. So I'm going to close the nav menu, and I'm going to go back into my employee list razor component. See, the problem here is that we have a page called employee list, and we have a component called employee list, and that's actually not a good thing. We really should have just one. The names should be unique because they could collide. So what we're going to do here is we're going to rename the page to just employees, right? You can see here, and we're going to also name this part up here that's the route basically for this page to employees. We're going to hit save, and we're going to go back into the nav menu and also change this into employees, just like that. This is the menu item, that the employee list menu item. So if I, just to make sure, let's just run this to make sure that it works. So to run it, you press this play button up here, or you could hit F5 on your keyboard if you didn't know. You can just hit F5, it's an easy way to do it. And now we have the default home page and an employee list page. And you can see here, if you look at the URL, that's exactly what it's doing. It's hitting employees. That's the route that it's hitting. When you click on this menu here, and then it takes you, this page right here is showing you the employees page. So let's just add, now what we want to do is add the employee component in the shared library to the employee page, the employees page rather. So to do that, it's actually very, very easy. So in here, all you're going to do is literally type in the name of the component. And the name of the component is employee list. I'm just going to hit F2, press Control-C to copy it, and then go back into my employees page, and that's it. So now I added a tag called employee list that represents the employee list Blazor component, whatever you want to call it. And if I load this, if I run this now, it should show us this component rendered on the employees page. So let's go into just to make it not confusing, I'm going to just change the header here to employees, because this is the employees page, and this one is the employee list. Save. And I'm just going to put in here something really basic. This is the employee list component. So we know that it actually works. Let's run it. And at this point, we click on the employee list menu item. You can see that it's not actually working. So why is this not actually working? Let me just do a hard refresh here, because that's kind of odd. It really should work. So what's interesting, right off the bat, I can see employee list here. Okay, I think I know what's going on. So it's kind of funny that it ran and didn't give me an error or anything. It just doesn't recognize the tag is what's going on. So very important. So it doesn't know where this is. Even though our Nuno Solutions Employees Client application, we added a reference to the shared project, the page itself does not know where this actually resides. We have to tell the client application to import the namespace for this component. And if you don't know what namespaces are, or each class rather in C# has to be within a namespace, right? And so the namespace that this employee list component is in is the name that we gave the project, which is Nuno Solutions.employees.shared. So I'm gonna press stop the application. I'm gonna just copy this because this is the namespace, and now we're gonna go into this. Back into the client application, client project rather, and go into this _imports razor file. And you can see here this using, oh, and it already has it though, which is interesting. When I added a reference to the shared project, automatically added it. Okay, so what I was going to say is whenever you want to access a specific component, you really have to have the namespace inside of this imports file so that your Blazor project will know where it is. So, but wait, I'm wrong here. So if you look here, this is the default namespace, but because it's in a components folder, you actually have to add in shared components. So what we're going to do is we're going to say @using .components, because each folder that you create inside of this class library is going to be a folder name. You know, if I nested folders in here, like if I added a component2 folder inside of the components folder, it would be components.component2, for example, the namespace. So you can save this, and now what you'll notice, you see how like the tag is now greenish or teal or cyan, whatever you want to call it? That's because Blazor recognizes this as an actual component now. So we're going to run this, and now you should see this component automatically showing in the employee list page. There we go. So you can see the component right here. Cool.